Hello friends, today we got a special bonus episode for our SlimeFun tutorial series. I wanted to put this out to thank you all for your amazing support. I really appreciate it. I'm going to skip the subscribe bit today because you guys have already been amazing about it, but if you haven't yet, please do. So we can jump right in today's bonus episode of SlimeFun Auto Kelp Farms, which we're going to use to power our basic androids in the next video. I spent a few hours the other day trying to figure out how to make kelp farms more efficient. I'd seen a lot of vanilla tutorials showing some nice simple designs that people were using for SlimeFun, but the results just weren't as much as I'd hoped for. On top of that, they weren't as space efficient as I'd personally go for. Then I realized my mistake. I, like many others, was looking for a vanilla solution for a SlimeFun problem. So, armed with new motivation, I got to work making my own version of an automatic kelp farm, utilizing one very special item, the Infused Hopper. As I mentioned in a previous video, the Infused Hopper collects every item dropped in a 7x7x7 space around it. This can save a ton of space, but it's also kind of annoying to make. So, my designs were built around maximizing kelp output while optimizing spatial efficiency and minimizing the number of infused hoppers. I made everything and tested everything from a standard kelp farm to this weird idea I had about a single-sided double-row kelp farm that, surprisingly enough, actually worked. Somehow. But the farm needed to be a complete cell in a 7x7x7 area so that it could be stackable in all directions to maximize output for small-time producers to massive industrial producers of tens of thousands per hour. Finally, I had it. This design uses a total space of 9x11x8, but the collection chamber is a perfect 7x7x7. It maximizes the number of kelp plants being farmed at a whopping 56 plants per cell. This whole 9x11x8 system is a cell, which includes 4 mini cells that all function the exact same way. It can be stacked in all directions at no diminishing returns as long as the chunks are loaded. Each cell produces approximately 420 kelp per hour, which is roughly 46 dried kelp blocks. It uses a minimal amount of materials and only uses one infused hopper. In testing, I stacked 20 of these cells per pillar with 15 rows and columns, which simulates less than a 5-chunk player loading radius server setting from sea level. Granted, this used quite a bit of materials, but I think it was worth it as it produced around 207,000 dried kelp blocks per hour, totaling to over 1.8 million kelp per hour. Alright, now enough showing off, time to teach you how it works and how to build it. Each mini-cell is rather simple and standard. The observers detect the block change whenever the kelp grows to its height, which emits a redstone signal to all of the pistons, which then activate, break the kelp of that row at that height too, leaving the base and deactivate. Because of the fact that dropped items group with others of the same type, and because they float in water sources and sink in flowing water, which is created when the pistons activate and deactivate, all of the items end up being in a 7x7x7 collection range, at which point they are swiftly deposited by the infused hopper at the center. This takes it down into our chest storage at the front. Now, this is how we make it. First, these are all the raw materials we need for each fuel cell. So we're going to need 104 glass. Now, this glass doesn't actually have to be glass. I just use glass so that we can see through to the kelp design if we're troubleshooting or if something goes wrong or anything like that. So I suggest using glass, though. It doesn't technically have to be. Then we have pistons, observers, dirt, other things would work in place of dirt, 42 redstone dust, an infused hopper, just one, 7 hoppers, 10 chests, kelp, a water bucket, and 42 of any building block. This doesn't have to be block of quartz. I just use block of quartz because it's easy to see and it looks nice. It's important to note, though, that the building block does have to be non-transparent. Otherwise, it messes up with the redstone. We want to make sure that our building location is also going to be loaded in. So if we're on a server, building it under a widely used shop, for instance, or in a factory, or some place that people are going to be around during a large part of the day. Same with your SlimeFun factories. In fact, having this close to your SlimeFun factory is going to be helpful in the long run. So we're going to start with rows of dirt, 7 blocks long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we did this 2x7. We're going to skip 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. And on the 4th block, do the exact same thing. Now we're going to go ahead and start building the walls to our mini cells. And we're going to place glass like that on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and place our pistons on top of the glass, facing in towards the dirt chamber. Now what we want to do is we want to take our building block and place it just like this, against the backs of the pistons. Now we're going to take our observers and from the backs make sure they're pointing in on top of the pistons. Now we're just going to place redstone right along here, on top of those building blocks we placed next to the pistons. All right, now we essentially already have the first layer pretty much done. There's only a few changes we're gonna have to make to it, but we're gonna go ahead and start on the next stage. So we're just gonna place our next layer of dirt right one block up and one block to the side, right on top of our other layer of dirt, just like this. If you put anything in front of the observers, you're gonna see it in action already. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the top layer. So we're going to place our glass right here and do the same thing on the other side. Now, once again, we're placing our pistons and our building blocks on the sides of those pistons. Now we're going to place our observers on top. And our redstone dust just on top of those building blocks. And we don't really need anything on the ceiling level because that would just make it more difficult to stack. Now that we're done with that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and build one side of our walls. And do the same thing on the other side. And we can go ahead and do that on our top layer as well. So now we're going to go ahead and put our water on the inside. Of course, make an infinite water source. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can do your 2x2. I personally am a 1x3 man, but, you know, to each their own. And don't worry about the redstone circuitry being messed up from this. It's totally safe as long as you've built everything, as I've said. And you're going to fill up the bottom layer with water. Make sure it's water sources all the way through. And now that you have water sources on the bottom layer, you don't actually have to worry about the piston layer because it's going to be cleared out anyway. So you can just start with the observer layer. Do be aware, this is rather painful as the observers are going to trigger. Every time you do that, it's really loud and yeah, the pistons just hit you back and forth every time. And we're going to go ahead and do this to every single one of our chambers. Now, if you're really worried about the whole pistons hitting you in the face thing while you're doing the water, I think it's kind of funny, but if you find it bothersome, you can always just take away the redstone here before actually putting the water in, and then that won't affect you. All right, so now that we have all of this set up, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our kelp in. So we're just going to take our kelp and put one layer of kelp all on the bottom. And there we go. Now we can just build our glass wall. And just like that, the entire kelp farm, besides the collection, is done. So for collection, what we're going to do is we're going to go inside this middle part here. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the fourth block, which is this one right here, we are just going to place a stand-in block so that we know where we're going to be. Go back to the front, put a chest here and a hopper here. Put a chest here and a hopper here. Chest, hopper. All we're doing here is making some buffer room for each cell. One more chest, hopper, and we're going to go in through the back. And so we didn't really need this placeholder block here, but I just like to do it so that we know where our center is going to be. So we've got that center, and we're just going to place 1, 2, 3 hoppers, and then our 1 infused hopper onto that, connecting into it. And you can see already it's all being collected in. Now, one thing we want to make sure we do is just make sure there's no kelp floating around. If there's some kelp floating around, that means either something went wrong or some of the kelp grouped up before the infused hopper was placed. So you can just avoid that by collecting the kelp, and then it'll all work perfectly. That wasn't the case here. Everything seems to be in order. And just like that, it's done. The best thing about it, though, is definitely gotta be its stackability. So I'm going to show you real quick what this looks like when you actually stack it forwards. Since the materials aren't super expensive, you can spend just a couple of hours collecting enough materials to build 10 of these pretty easily. So I'm going to show you what that looks like if you have, say, 9. All right, so here we have 9 of our cells all hooked up via SlimeFun cargo. If you want to know how to do that, or if you missed that video, there's a link to that video right here. And so yeah, we can turn these little indicators off by just right-clicking on our cargo manager. Basically what I've done is I've just set them all up with connectors and inputs, all set to channel 1 on whitelist to get kelp into channel 1, and then of course deposit that kelp here. It's only been running for maybe a couple minutes, I'm not really sure, but it's already, as you can see, filling up quite nicely. Now, running the cargo systems through all this can be a bit tricky, so just make tunnels underneath is what I did. One thing this design isn't great for is that because it's 7 by 7 by 7, so those collection areas are based on the increments of 7, and the default range for our cargo systems is 6. It means that it's kind of annoyingly inefficient with our connectors' range, but that's fine. I mean, it doesn't really matter. As you can see, we're getting a little bit of a carryover on some of the top ones over here, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. I'm not sure if it's because I did not build all these. I definitely world edited them over, and that does tend to mess up with SlimeFun sometimes. But it's definitely happening because of the world edit thing. So yeah, that won't happen in yours. It's just a matter of that infused hopper being not recognized by SlimeFun because it was copied over and not placed. But yeah, you can expect quite a bit of results. Of course, now with this, I could have just stacked another layer of 9 on top and then another layer on top of that, and then you'd have 27. I just wanted to keep it rather small for this, but yeah, the results are absolutely incredible with this. In our next video, we're going to be looking at Android automation to prepare for finally we're going to be able to get to fully automating our dust generation. And so we're going to be talking about how do we get from this to our actual dried kelp blocks, which we're going to be using as fuel for our androids. That's going to be it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave in the comments section and I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if you found it helpful, please subscribe. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it helps me out a ton. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.